Hey guys, I wanted to make a video talking about how stressful it is after getting a hair transplant because a lot of people in my comments have been asking me to talk about a subject like this, and I figured why not be as truthful as I can be about a hair transplant and what actually comes after it gets done. A lot of times on social media it is kind of advertised nowadays as something glamorous and something that's so easy to do. You go into the clinic, everyone looks happy and everyone on your side and trying to get your hair back, and then immediately after that nobody talks about the journey that happens right after your transplant up until at least you grow some hair. Now, I've been documenting my entire journey on this channel very openly and transparently to show people what that stress actually looks like, as well as what the realistic expectations are of getting a hair transplant. I've been seeing a lot of people that I know, especially these big influencers, that have kind of glamorized it a little bit more than it should be, and people try to encourage you to go get a hair transplant, but you have to be prepared for what is to come when that actually all happens. So I remember when I got my hair transplant about 2 years ago for the first time, I literally didn't know anything of what to expect. I saw a bunch of videos online as well, and I got convinced that it was going to be an easy, painless process. But the reality is it was not at all. The first big thing that happened was that it was quite a painful experience. A lot of people online say it's not that bad, but I mean, I don't know what type of pain tolerance you guys have, but for me, getting injections on my scalp, my forehead, and my donor area was extremely painful. I didn't expect that level of pain. Granted, it only lasts for 30 seconds, but it's still something that you're not really used to. Especially if you are someone that doesn't have a high pain tolerance, it's gonna hurt. But again, it only lasts for a short period of time, and then your entire scalp is numb. Those injections are also used to pump anesthesia into your scalp so that the surgeon can proceed with doing the extractions of your donor hair and place them onto your scalp later on. Now, dealing with the pain is one thing, but once you have that numbness on your scalp, you won't even feel a thing, which is great. But when you go home after the surgery and the anesthesia starts to wear off, the pain really does start coming back. You do have painkillers and swelling medication to kind of counter that, but at the end of the day, you're still gonna get a little bit of pain and headaches that come with it. And people don't talk about that enough. I feel like if you're not prepared to know what you have to go through after a hair transplant, you're not gonna have the best experience afterwards. Now, another thing that people get stressed about is how do you take care of your scalp after the hair transplant? The first thing to know that after a hair transplant, you're not going to get any good sleep for at least the first 10 days. According to the doctors, you have to sit upright and sleep for the first few days after a hair transplant. This is to help to prevent you touching your pillowcase with your scalp and damaging your existing transplanted hairs. It is tough, but you just have to do it. Some of the things that I recommend you doing is sleeping in an upright 45-degree angle position, and positioning your pillows in a certain way to create a sort of fort around yourself to give you that little bit of comfort. There's also a really good travel pillow that I highly recommend you use. It's called the Cabeau travel pillow. It's linked in the description below. It was a lifesaver for me because it gave me that extra support that I needed for my head and my neck, so it wasn't always tilting backwards and touching my pillow or my headboard. Now, once you get those first few days out of the way, you will start to feel a little bit normal when sleeping, but again, it's not easy. It's the worst. But after the 7th day, you can probably start slowly sleeping more down towards your back, eventually getting back to a little bit of normalcy. But obviously it doesn't stop there. When you start going to sleep that way, you're going to feel a little paranoid that your hairs might be falling off, or it might have scraped off while you're sleeping on your pillow. So these type of things will still happen to you regardless. I took an extra precaution of an additional 3 days just to kind of make sure I had no issues on my scalp. I waited until my scabs were off, and then I kind of went back just laying flat on my bed to sleep. But again, it's up to you. You can sleep as comfortably as you want after the 7th day, but it's just something to think about whenever you're planning to sleep after a hair transplant. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is washing your head after your hair transplant. Again, this is something that I didn't really understand too well after getting it done because I thought that it would be pretty easy, but it is quite a task to get through, especially if you're trying to do it all on your own. Granted, the first day after your hair transplant, the clinic does sit you down and wash it for you. At least the clinic that I went to, which is Vera Clinic. I have a link to them in the description below, but they taught me exactly how to wash my hair using a 2-finger method and rubbing it on the donor area very lightly and then tapping on my scalp. Now, I've shown exactly how to do this in a video that I made on my channel. Check it out if you haven't already, because it is extremely useful for anyone who has gotten their hair transplant and needs to understand how to wash their scalp afterwards. There is one thing that I didn't do in that video, which was use a simple cup and use it on my scalp. I wish I had done that before, but a lot of people in the comments have told me this is probably the easier way. I didn't realize that at the time. I was using my fingers and my hands, and it wasn't fun. But there are easier ways to do this. I would recommend as well using a cup and putting some water inside and gently pouring it on your scalp when you're washing your head. This doesn't just last for the first 7 days like sleeping does for the hair transplant. This lasts for at least a month of washing your head properly and thoroughly to make sure it's clean and you're getting the right shampoo on it, as well as the donor area, before it heals up. Washing your head is going to be a thing for at least 3 months in your hair transplant journey. Once you start seeing those hairs grow out, you can start taking it a little more easy on your scalp. Another thing that a lot of people get stressed about after hair transplants is the shedding phase. There will be a point in time where you're going to be sitting down after a couple months after your hair transplant and wondering if this was all worth your time and effort, because you'll stare at yourself in the mirror and realize that all of the hair that they have placed onto your scalp is now gone. But don't fear, it's all part of that process, because once that hair does come out, it is a good sign that your new hairs are actually growing out. Now, a lot of people tend to worry so much about this and freak out, but in reality, it's not a bad thing. I've had a lot of people drop me emails saying that maybe the donor area is shedding more or their scalp is shedding more, but I promise you it is all very normal. Shedding usually happens because of all of the new hairs that have been placed on your scalp. They're just being pushed out of the way so that new transplanted hairs can grow in. In other areas that are shedding, it might be because of a major surgery that you just had and your scalp is just adjusting to that period because it's gone through a lot of trauma of a surgery, so some hairs will naturally shed off. Now, that might also be your native hairs, which is why it's really important to take finasteride during this period, so you can counter some of that shedding with the medicine. Speaking of finasteride, that is another reason why a lot of people are terrified of getting hair transplants, or even hair loss for that matter. Finasteride helps keep your native hairs and your existing hairs that you currently have, rather than letting them fall off in the future. It is a commitment to be on finasteride because you most likely have to be on it lifelong, according to the clinics and the doctors. If you do start the medication, you don't want to fluctuate and not take it sometimes and then take it sometimes. Then your hair ends up falling off and you don't even understand what's going on. If you stay consistent with your medication as well, you'll eventually see results in 3 to 6 months. Doing it together with the hair transplant is the best way possible because your hairs are growing and you're stabilizing at the same time. So it is very beneficial if you stay on the medication. Granted that it is not all good with finasteride. There are side effects that come along with it, such as a lower sex drive or even erectile dysfunction, but it is a very low chance you'll probably get that. According to a study, there are only 3% of men who are actually affected by this throughout the world. That's actually significantly a very small number. I've been on it for the past 2.5 years and I can openly say that I've never had an issue with it. At the beginning, when I started taking it, I was definitely nervous because I didn't really know what to expect, and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to be on something that would cause these things for me. But I believe it was completely a placebo effect because it was all in my head, and the moment I started telling myself that this is not a true thing, I overcame it immediately, and I never had an issue with any of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying that not everybody can feel the way I did. You could be affected by it, but even if you are, you can stop the medication and 2 weeks later, your body will get back to normal. So there is a time period where you take it, and if you're feeling like you're receiving any side effects, you can stop the medication and you'll be right back to normal. One other thing that I wanted to mention was that being stressed for a hair transplant is only going to add more hair loss to your scalp. Try to not think too much about it and enjoy the ride. Enjoy the process of getting your hair back. A lot of people fear that sometimes they don't get the right clinic or they get the wrong doctor, which all adds up to them having more stress on themselves, and then more hair falls out unknowingly. It's honestly all in your head. Take me for an example. I've documented my entire journey on this channel, showcasing you that the less stress you have, the more hair you'll grow. Just stay positive, and I promise you your hair will grow out the way you want it to, especially if you've done all the right steps in taking care of your hair and your scalp after a hair transplant. I always try to spread positivity about a hair transplant because I've had 2 really good successful journeys and I've had a good result come from it. So as living proof, I'm trying to show you that it is possible to get the desired look that you want. You just have to stay patient and trust the process. But if you still do have questions about a hair transplant, you can always book a one-on-one session with me. I have a one-on-one hair consultation service that helps you guys understand your hair transplants, your hair, and your hair loss all together in one. Now, whether you've already gotten a hair transplant or you're planning to get one, I'm happy to answer all your questions. We can have a conversation about it. I've helped so many other people in the past already. I'm so grateful that I'm able to help anyone out there because I wish I had that when I was in my period of getting a hair transplant, but I decided to be the person instead. So book some time with me. There is a link in the description below, and hopefully we can have that conversation together. Alright, I hope this video was helpful to anybody out there who is feeling a little stressed about their hair transplants. Don't worry, it will get better, I promise you. Just hang in there. Watch my monthly videos to show you proof that the hair does get better over time. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.